Here we have the Stihl mse250c. Where's the mse250c? This is Stihl's biggest, baddest corded electric chainsaw. There's your plug-in. I gotta say, I've had this for about 6 months now. Been doing firewood with it. I've probably cut about 10 to 15 cords of wood with it. This is not it. This is not it, guys. There's a lot of problems that this saw has that it doesn't need to have. That's still just... I don't know what the deal was with their decision making. So let's go through it. First of all, our handle does not come over the axis of the bar. I have the bar off, but you can tell where it's going to be. And I'm about like 2.5 inches over from being directly over the bar. So you can't get good leverage. It doesn't handle well. You can't really angle the saw like this very comfortably. The chain brake feels cheap. It feels plasticky. I mean, I know they're all plastic these days, but this just feels like it's going to break. The oil reservoir, first of all, it's got this stupid cap, which I know all Stihls do these days, but it still does not make it any less dumb. And then our grip safety is not a grip safety. There's no safety up here, like every other chainsaw ever. It's a thumb safety that you press, and then you pull the trigger. And it's substantially less ergonomic. It doesn't let you hold the saw down here and get more leverage, even though you have all this room to get extra leverage, which you'll need because this saw cuts slow as shit. The only thing that allows you to cut at a decent speed is the fact that we do get some pretty generous dogs for how small of a saw this is. But we see we have what I believe is an 8-pin. Nope, it's a 7-pin sprocket. Pretty standard. I got mine with an 18-inch bar. And I should have got it with the 16-inch bar. This does not make enough power to effectively cut with an 18-inch bar at all. Your chain speed is super, super slow. So even if you're cutting super well and you're just pulling out chunks of wood that you can pick up and hold like that, it's going to cut very, very slowly. You want the 16. It's the only way you're going to cut at a decent speed with this. We're also running a single stud system, which sucks. I don't know why they would do that. The whole outer housing is also just very plasticky all around. I don't like it. I feel like if I drop it the wrong way... I mean, it is well built. Just not as well built as other professional saws. And this is the closest thing to a professional saw you can get that still plugs into a wall. And I'll get to you, sir. So this whole thing here sucks. But what really sucks is this little red button there is the bane of my existence. So basically, I believe how this works, and I'm not sure. I'm not an engineer or anything, and I haven't ripped this open, so don't quote me. I believe there's a cooling fan in here that spins with the motor, or at least some form of cooling fin or something. And basically, the more you're cutting, and the more you're bogging the saw down, and the lower RPMs you're going, this saw is not able to cool itself if it's not free spinning. So if you are running it, even if you're just cutting like a 10-inch or 12-inch piece of oak, yeah, let's say like a 12-inch piece of red oak, if you're going hard into that with the dogs because you want to cut it at a reasonable speed, you are going to overheat the saw, and a fuse, a little breaker or whatever in here will pop. And you will not be able to run this saw again for like 2 minutes until you click this button and you hear a very high-pitched click. And you can press this button all you want before the saw is ready. You can even unplug the saw and plug it back in and press this button, and it won't do anything. It will only do it when the saw has cooled sufficiently to where you can reset the fuse. And there's no audible or visual cue that it's ready to be reset. You just have to keep pressing it until it's ready. And sometimes it will be 30 seconds. Sometimes it will be a few minutes depending on the weather, the conditions, how hot the saw is. It's so stupid, and it should just be completely bypassed. And to my knowledge, there's not a way to bypass it. And literally, if you're cutting and you just go try and bury the bar a little too tough for 1 second, it can stall the saw, especially on a hot day. Now, I've been working it in the cooler weather now that it's October, and it does fare a lot better in cooler weather, but it still should be said that if you're working in 80 degrees plus, you're going to be sitting there waiting around for this saw to cool down, and you just have to keep pressing the button because you don't know when the saw will let you use it again. It's the dumbest thing. I've never seen it before. I don't know if the smaller corded saws use it. It's a terrible idea. None of the battery saws have something like that. And it's the worst thing on this saw by far. But it's not the last bad thing. So second of all, you also see how far this electric motor comes out this way. Realistically, this should be on this side of the saw to balance out the ergonomics of the saw. It's not that it's a heavy saw, but if you are cutting firewood and you have something here at all, you can't get in there with the blade, with the bar. And I know that that's true on every saw, but most other saws you can cut effectively at a weird angle. You can't even hold this at a bad angle like that. You've got 90 degrees of effective motion and about 3 inches more protrusion on the side that just limits what you're cutting. It's very, very frustrating. And it makes for a very cumbersome experience when you have to get around to the other side of the log and then worry about tripping over your cord. Additionally, this came with this light 04 bar with the green tip, which I guess means anti-kickback. And this is, let's zoom in here, a 3/8 050 18-inch bar. So I wanted to go to a 16-inch bar. So I bought a 3/8 050 16-inch bar. Again, this is an 18. And the bar comes, I get it out of the box, and it doesn't fit. What the fuck still? So not only, and it's not like I could just drill this hole bigger. So the tensioner doesn't line up, but also this whole backside is different. And this is more akin to what you'd see on a climbing saw, even though it's 3/8 050 pitch. I went to a Stihl dealer. They didn't have a single saw or a single bar other than this one that was 3/8 050 16-inch. They had all different pitches because they're Stihl, so they've got like 1/4 inch 325, 3/8 043, and then some bigger stuff as well. And they had 3/8 050. But they did not, this is a different interface, clearly. And you can clearly tell, and I'm not a Stihl guy, so I don't have a ton of Stihl bars laying around. But this is a very wide slot for the tensioner here, thanks to these weird, like, stepped up studs. They step up where they mate to the saw. So I'm struggling to find a bar for this, and I just wasted $60-something on this bar. Thankfully, I can put it on something else, maybe. But I can't find the 16-inch bar for this at a Stihl dealership that sells electric chainsaws. They have, not this specific one, but they have a lot of them. And it's like, does this use a different bar than every other Stihl chainsaw? Or am I just missing something? So then I was like, all right, well, this also came with the safety chain. You can see with the green master link. And it cuts good for a safety chain. It cuts pretty well. But you can see it's got that like 2-part raker there. And I'm like, I've got some old Stihl Oil-O-Matic. This is a 3/8 050 spool, and I know that it's a 3/8 050 spool because we just put it on another bar that was 3/8 050. It was a Husky, but it was a 3/8 050 bar. And it runs and works just fine. So I know what this chain is. And we had it in the box, and it was labeled and everything. 3/8 050. And again, this is a 3/8 050 bar. This chain does not fit this bar. What is this bar? It's obnoxious how difficult this is. This, I know it's not a common chainsaw, but it should be using common components with all the rest of the Stihl stuff. Additionally, this is plastic, which is not uncommon, but like, come on. For a $700 electric chainsaw that cuts as fast as like a 35cc saw, it should be fucking metal. Excuse my French. We do have a captive bar nut, which is nice. That's kind of rare for Stihl. And then moving back to here, to the cord. First of all, people might say, oh, well, that's too short to use on anything. That's by design. It's so that you can't cut the cord with the saw, and that you have to use an extension cord. So if you cut an extension cord, okay, you just go get another one. You don't have to take this apart and put a new cord on the back of it. However, when you're walking around the job site, moving around, getting different angles, you're tugging on it to get more slack, this is just going to come unplugged immediately. And so what you're forced to do is tie it into a knot with the extension cord and then plug it in. And you've got this big, bulky knot. Like, imagine like triple that size to do the whole knot. And it's annoying. It takes a solid minute to either plug it in or unplug it. There should just be a piece of plastic or rubber that just comes around and just clamps them together and just holds them together so that you don't have to deal with that. And I tried to rig up like straps and stuff and string and Velcro. None of it worked. There's just no way to do it properly. And that's just like, it's an afterthought. It's foolish. And this saw, it just cuts slow. It just cuts very, very slow at the end of the day. And I could put I was planning on trying to put a shorter bar and maybe even a bigger sprocket on it, because it doesn't really bog down much when you're cutting, and it doesn't stall out unless you overheat it. So I was planning on trying to get it to cut faster, but it just doesn't. I can't figure it out. And I think it's just like, come on, Stihl, like, make this easier. Make this easier, because I can... All of the Husky bars I have here, there's two interfaces. There's the smaller interface and the larger interface. And like that's it for all of the Husky saws we fit. Going all the way back to the 2100, these bars will fit on our 572 or 390. All of our 550s have the same stuff. All of your 545s, your 440s, all that shit, all is on the same two interfaces. Your climbing saw might be on something different, I'm not sure. Versus, like, I'm being faced with 3 or 4 or 5 interfaces at the Stihl dealership for the mounting point, and it's just, and then they're all different for the different chain pitches, and then 2 chains from the same pitch aren't fitting the same bar. What are we doing, Stihl? Don't buy this for over $700.